Thank you so much for tuning in to our 2026 State of the YAYA report. We now pass the mic to you as we invite up teams Mirage and Parallax for questions.
Thank you to all the teams. That was amazing. All right, first question of the day. What are specific changes that organizations should make to better attract or retain new college grads?
From the American Dream standpoint, thinking in terms of a workplace environment, our research heavily preferred that hybrid or flexible work schedules are extremely fulfilling to YAYAs. We do kind of work to live as opposed to the opposite philosophy. And so when we do have that time to maybe go on a vacation, see a friend that we had in college in our workplace, that is really preferred. And so having hybrid schedules is really nice. We also have a preference for companies that maybe have like days where maybe you're not working and you're doing community service with your coworkers, and opportunities to give back to your community and to our communities. It makes us feel like we're making a difference beyond just like the corporate work that we do.
Yeah, and then looking at it from kind of a marketing perspective and a learner's odyssey perspective, we thought that agencies really leaning into experiential marketing was really effective, really leaning into the lived experiences and getting outside YAYA's phones and showing too that like brands' values align with YAYA's values, and experiential is a great way to do that.
In terms of authenticity, YAYAs are interviewing your brand and your company just as much as you're interviewing them. We talk about with authenticity that YAYAs don't want to surround themselves with fake people. They want community, and that involves in the workplace. So being your authentic self from the interview process to when they're hired to the entire time that you're working together is really the best thing you can do to keep YAYAs on board.
Thank you. Okay, next question. And if there's questions in the room, just raise your hand and we will get to you as well. Okay, question for the group. How do we break through digital noise to reach YAYAs? How are their search habits shifting?
As far as from a true knowledge perspective, their search habits are shifting in ways that they are constantly being bombarded by information. So from a brand perspective, if you're really able to be fully transparent, and I think this was covered in authenticity too, just being transparent in your use of AI or other marketing tactics and really playing into that curiosity of YAYAs is really what's going to be most effective.
I think also thinking about agencies and brands trying to connect with YAYAs outside of the digital landscape. We talked about it earlier. Experientials is something that's really like on the trend right now. For us, I think even last semester, we saw Bath and Body Works do an experiential event in New York City. And that's a way that the brand is connecting to their audience in a way that isn't just through social media. And I think we look at that and we recognize, oh, they see that we're not necessarily treating that space the same. And so they're trying to meet us where we're at now.
With regards to what is authenticity, I think the coolest thing about your brand is what makes you different from all the others. So our advice would be to just know exactly who you are, really sit with your brand, understand your brand, and just make sure that everything you do is in accordance with that.
Thank you. Okay, question for Team Parallax, but I know each group touched on this to some degree. Did YAYAs using AI to shop for fun items or essentials come up in your research? If so, what did that look like?
Yeah, speaking for true knowledge, we didn't necessarily touch on that this semester for our survey, but we actually touched on it a little bit with our Bath and Body Works semester client, and we found that they're wanting personal experiences when they're shopping, and those AI suggestions don't necessarily feel like that. So they want experiential shopping, like we talked about, like Bath and Body Works did. So I can't speak definitively, but the data as of last semester was showing that they weren't necessarily leaning towards AI when shopping.
Okay. Another question for the group. As your time at Mizzou comes to a close, sob, your learning doesn't stop. It shifts into a new environment. What do you expect learning to look like for you in the workforce?
I can speak to this personally. I think that as far as learning goes, stepping into professional roles and possible internships is really going to be mentorship. And I think being able to learn from the people I surround myself with, my team, is really what's going to be most valuable to me and what's going to make me feel more confident going into an unfamiliar role.
I'd second that, and I'd really like to emphasize the mentorship portion. I think when people have a strong connection to somebody else in their workplace, someone they can rely on and trust, it kind of bleeds into authenticity in a sense, that they are far more inclined to be willing to learn and learn quicker. I feel like, at least online, I see that people are losing faith in the belief that they will be trained on the job, but I believe that personally, that's a very important factor in making sure that your employees are prepared. So making sure that there's some level of mentorship or at least close teamwork to make sure people can ask questions and seek the knowledge that they need.
Yes. And then last thing I'd add, just in this increasing digital world, I think as authenticity, we all kind of touched on it. It just feels like where it's more and more difficult every single day to connect with the people around us. And so I think that's something that really helps us feel like we're grounded and we're really making an impact, is when I can see something in person and I'm actively affecting somebody in a positive way, and vice versa with that mentorship role. And so, yeah, I think that helps us feel like we're, getting something out of our work experiences and then kind of tying back into our lives. That's just my personal opinion, but yeah.
Thank you. Next question. If you do not agree with a brand's values, how deterring is that if you genuinely need their services?
That's a tough question. I think it depends on the brand or service that's being provided. Obviously, if it's something that you can't go without, you're going to have to suck it up unless there's a better option. But I do think that as I mature and I age, I really am being more conscious about what brands I am supporting. So if there's something that's going against my beliefs or they're doing something that I don't necessarily agree with, I will do everything in my power to find an alternative. But obviously, if it's something that just can't be replaced, you just got to deal with it for the time being.
Yeah, I love what Kaylee said. I will also say that there is an explosion of brands right now. I feel like, especially within the past few years, we're seeing so many brands pop up for the same things. And to be quite frank, they really do all look the same. So yes, there are instances where sometimes you do have to suck it up, of course. But at this point in time, we have so many options. And if YAYAs don't agree with your brand values, they do have other opportunities to go somewhere else.
Thank you. As you start interviewing, what are the deal breakers for you in a job or workplace?
I think honestly a lot of us could say this, but for me it's lack of transparency. I think especially with compensation and our how that ties to how much we give to our education and commit ourselves to learning. We want to see that reflected in the workforce, but also transparently. So I think going through the process and not only understanding what you're getting yourself into, but the culture of the work, and then of course the pay.
I think that also bleeds, especially early on, into the LinkedIn of it all. In our first LinkedIn social post, we referenced that AI parsing of resumes is something that really terrifies YAYAs in general. And I believe that just not, like Isaac said, not being transparent about what sort of AI you're using to parse resumes, or not being clear on benefits, hours, pay, anything like that is not very satisfactory. And then the one thing I would like to add is a lot of interviews. I feel like a lot of people have experienced 3 to 4 interviews for an entry-level role. And while I believe, of course, a company should interview as many times to feel secure in who they're hiring, at the same time, there's some level where it could be a sped up process. You're usually able to narrow it down before the final interview where a conclusion could be made earlier. Maybe at least being more transparent through that process and how many interviews they should be expecting, or being more clear in whether they intend to follow up, and actually following up after they say they're going to follow up would be it would be more of an impactful feeling.
When I was doing qualitative research for what is authenticity, this one participant was talking about the interview process he went through for a job, and he ended up turning the job down because they were asking such cookie cutter questions, and the lack of personality ultimately led to a lack of connection between the guy and the interviewer, and that's the loss for the job. So.
Two things that I always ask about in interviews are retention and office culture, which are pretty self-explanatory things. But if you see that there's a pretty frequent turnover of employees, that kind of raises a flag in my mind, because if everyone is coming in and then leaving, what makes me want to come in? So maybe before you're even bringing anyone on, taking a look internally and seeing how are people feeling, what about this environment would make someone want to work here, and really dig into that before you start looking at hiring processes.
In a somewhat related question, what do you think YAYA's biggest challenges are as they head into the workforce post-graduation?
I think we kind of all touched on it in our presentations. There's this stigma that we all feel older generations kind of view us as lazy or stupid or addicted to our phones. And I think all 3 of our presentations through our qualitative and quantitative research disprove that theory entirely. We are trying our hardest, but AI parsing of resumes and the connections that I should have been doing 10 years ago, it feels like, triumph over all hard work. So as we said, only 20% of us in this room, in the survey at least, believe that we actually can work harder and smarter and get what we truly want. And so I think really it's just this challenge of trying to not be digital, but if we aren't digital, then am I going to get a job? And what opportunities can I actually, afford? So I think that's the current sentiment, just feeling like we're this constant battle of who we want to be in the digital space.
In another related question about the post-grad life, what are some ways a manager can support your success?
I think that depends on the tendencies of the employee. I do think there needs to be a outline of how you prefer to work, and if the employee is like, I guess, neglectful of their own needs, then to a degree it might be their fault. But I do think that there should be open communication in how they learn best, whether that's being supported, whether that's criticism, whether that's lifting them up constantly, pat on the back. It doesn't necessarily matter as long as you're fitting to their mold and making sure that they're remaining engaged. They just don't want to feel like they're kind of doing nothing or not being supported when they are doing something. So either support, criticism, feedback, etc. Just talk to them about it, and I'm sure they're willing to share.
I think the best thing a manager can do is get to know your employer as a person. Ask them about their lives, because what YAYAs really are craving is a genuine connection, and you won't do that if you don't get to know them as a person. So
I would second that, what Inez said, and also just emphasize again the importance of mentorship. And one time I was in an interview and I was asked, how do you like to receive feedback? And that was a really impactful question to me, and it really made me kind of think about how I did want to receive feedback. And I think that that is something that's very valuable to just be transparent about with managers.
Okay, last question of the morning. Was there anything you found in your research that surprised you or seemed in contrast to your own values?
Speaking for true knowledge, not necessarily in contrast of my own values, but something that was exciting and surprising for us to find out. So through our survey, we found out 59% of Yayas use their phones as second brains, and that's something that we could have kind of hypothesized. We know that Yayas use their phones as an extensions and as a search engine, and they can kind of store their information there. But what surprised us in the survey was a lack of reliance on their devices. We found that over half of Yayas feel confident doing their daily tasks if they lost access to their phones. Over half would feel confident being able to stay calm and not anxious if they lost access to their phones. So although they're using their devices to optimize their potential, it doesn't mean that they're addicted to their phones, and being able to disprove that stereotype was really exciting for us. But
it doesn't really go with how I feel as well, kind of like what you said. But from what the Learner's Odyssey pointed to earlier, that people think Yayas have this reputation of being reliant on AI. However, Yayas are trusting AI more, and they're becoming a little bit more reflective to it, which goes towards the package deal in some type of way. They're trying to find this good balance between convenience with authenticity in AI. So our data was showing that 79% are open to AI-generated content, but there's that 64% who wouldn't use AI for any type of personal advice. So they're using AI for efficiency, but when it comes to human connection, that's where they're drawing the line.
And then speaking on behalf of the American Dream, I know our team was a little bit worried about the results. We were thinking that it was going to be depressing, but we found that Yayas are actually really strategic players. They know how to get ahead, and they use coping strategies like the let them theory to change their mindset. And there really is a non-zero chance that you can accomplish anything. So just try the best you can.
In terms of authenticity as well, I think we all really expected that authenticity is this innate instinct. It's something that you can just point out that that's authentic. It's something that you are automatically, but authenticity is hard. We talked about it in our presentation, but it is a skill rather than an instinct. We need to learn how to be authentic as Yayas, as people, as brands. We've grown up with so many influences, especially Yayas from the second we were born. We were born with DSs and leapfrogs and iPods in our hands, and that has not really changed at all. We've been bombarded with everything our whole entire lives. We're shaped by everything we've ever consumed. So we need to do a lot of work to get back to who we are authentically. The same goes for brands and really everyone.
Thank you to everyone who was online, everyone in the room. Thank you to the Mojo Ad staff for an amazing year and an amazing presentation. Let's give them another round of applause. For anyone who missed any part of the presentation, these will be on the Mojo Ad YouTube site within the next few days, and the books. The 3 wonderfully creative books are now available for download on the Mojo Ad website. That concludes today's presentation. Thank you all, and have a good day.